Every empire borrows against time itself. That's not philosophy. It's pattern. It's the architecture of every major collapse in recorded history. Debt didn't just fund expansion. It became the mechanism of control. And when the balance tips, power doesn't vanish, it transfers. This is the story of how debt became slavery. Not in metaphor, in structure. Florence, 1343. The city that invented modern banking. Two families controlled Europe's credit, the Bardi and the Peruzzi. They lent to kings. They financed wars. They held the debts of England, France, and Naples. Their ledgers were empires in ink. Then Edward III of England defaulted, not because he was broke, because he could. A king's word meant nothing against distance and power. The Bardi collapsed. The Peruzzi followed. Florentine banking shattered. Thousands lost everything. The city's dominance ended overnight. But the lesson wasn't learned. It was inherited. Rome didn't fall to barbarians first. It fell to its own treasury. By the 3rd century, the empire had overextended. Legions on every border, roads that bled gold, a military that consumed half the budget. To pay for it, emperors debased the currency. The denarius, once pure silver, became copper with a silver wash. Soldiers were paid in coins that bought less every year. Merchants stopped accepting them. Inflation became a wildfire. The state responded by fixing prices. That only created black markets. Grain rotted in warehouses because farmers refused to sell at state rates. The empire didn't collapse from invasion. It collapsed from insolvency. By the time the Visigoths arrived in 410, Rome was already a corpse. The sacking was just ceremony. The pattern repeats. Debt funds ambition. Ambition demands more debt. And when repayment becomes impossible, the system rewrites the rules or breaks. Spain learned this in the 1550s. Philip II inherited an empire that circled the globe. Silver poured in from the Americas. Galleons filled with Potosi silver crossed the Atlantic every season. Spain should have been untouchable, but the silver never stayed. It paid for wars in the Netherlands. It funded armies in Italy. It serviced debts to German and Italian bankers. The crown borrowed against future silver shipments. When those shipments fell short, Philip defaulted. 4 times. 1557, 1560, 1575, 1596. Each default wiped out creditors. But the empire kept borrowing. Spain's wealth was an illusion. It was a conveyor belt. Silver in, debt out. The empire that discovered the New World bankrupted itself with its own treasure. That confidence was the first crack. France tried something different. In 1716, John Law convinced the French crown to experiment. He created a central bank. He issued paper money backed by the theoretical wealth of the Louisiana Territory. He promised infinite growth. Investors poured in. The Mississippi Company's stock soared. Fortunes were made overnight. Then reality arrived. The territory was mostly swamp. The wealth didn't exist. The bubble popped. The currency collapsed. Law fled the country. France returned to metal coins. But the damage was done. Confidence in paper, in promises, in the system itself, shattered. 50 years later, the French Revolution erupted, not just from bread shortages, from a treasury so hollowed out by debt and speculation that the state couldn't function. The guillotine was the bill come due. Weimar Germany, 1923. The Great War ended. The Treaty of Versailles demanded reparations, 132 billion gold marks, an impossible sum. Germany printed money to pay it. The printing presses ran day and night. In January 1923, a loaf of bread cost 250 marks. By November, it cost 200 billion. Wages were paid twice a day because money lost value by the hour. Savings evaporated. The middle class was erased. Wheelbarrows of cash bought nothing. Hyperinflation didn't just destroy wealth. It destroyed trust. In government, in currency, in the future. That void filled with extremism. The Weimar Republic didn't fall to force. It fell to desperation, and desperation elected what came next. No one noticed the collapse had already started. Lebanon, 2019. A small country. A big crisis. For decades, Lebanon's banks offered some of the highest interest rates in the world. Depositors flocked. The Lebanese pound was pegged to the dollar. The system seemed stable. But the peg was a lie. The central bank was running a Ponzi scheme. It used new deposits to pay old obligations. It borrowed dollars to prop up the pound. When foreign reserves ran out, the banks froze accounts. People couldn't access their own money. Protests erupted. The currency collapsed. The pound lost 90% of its value. By 2021, 78% of the population was in poverty. Pharmacies ran out of medicine. Hospitals ran out of fuel. The state, the banks, and the currency all failed simultaneously. Not from war. From a system built on borrowed time. The pattern is always the same. Borrow to grow, grow to borrow. Repeat until the machine consumes itself. The United States, 2008. The housing market was booming. Banks bundled mortgages into securities. They sold them as safe investments. Ratings agencies gave them top marks. Everyone believed home prices would rise forever. They didn't. Subprime mortgages defaulted. The securities collapsed. Lehman Brothers fell. AIG needed a bailout. The global financial system froze. Credit vanished. Businesses couldn't make payroll. The stock market hemorrhaged value. The response? More debt. The Federal Reserve printed trillions. Governments bailed out banks. Interest rates dropped to near zero. The system was saved. But the underlying problem wasn't solved. It was postponed. By 2020, U.S. national debt exceeded 100% of GDP. Corporate debt hit record levels. Student debt passed $1.7 trillion. Household debt climbed. The economy didn't deleverage. It doubled down. That confidence was the first crack. Here's the deeper truth. Debt isn't just financial, it's structural. It's a tool of control. When a person borrows, they owe time. When a nation borrows, it owes sovereignty. The creditor doesn't need to invade. They just need to wait. The International Monetary Fund learned this. After World War II, developing nations needed capital. The IMF lent it. But the loans came with conditions. Structural adjustment programs, privatization, austerity, cut social spending, open markets. The borrowing country didn't just owe money, it owed policy. Argentina borrowed in the 1980s. By 2001, it defaulted. Greece borrowed in the 2000s. By 2010, it was under IMF control. Each time, sovereignty transferred. Not through war, through debt. Modern systems are more sophisticated. But the mechanism is identical. Central banks print money. Governments borrow it. The debt grows. Interest payments consume larger portions of budgets. Eventually, debt service costs more than infrastructure, education, or defense. Japan's national debt is over 260% of GDP. The government spends a quarter of its budget on interest. Italy's debt is 150%. Both countries are trapped. They can't grow fast enough to escape. They can't default without collapsing. So they borrow more. The system isn't broken. It's designed this way. Debt creates dependency. Dependency creates control. The question isn't if it collapses, it's when. And who holds the ledger when it does? No one noticed the collapse had already started. The difference now is scale. Rome's debts were regional. Spain's were imperial. Weimar's were national. Today's debts are global. The US dollar is the world's reserve currency. That means American debt is everyone's problem. If the dollar collapses, so does the global trade system. If US treasuries default, pension funds, central banks, and sovereign wealth funds vaporize. China holds over $1 trillion in US debt. Japan holds more. Europe holds more. They can't dump it without crashing their own economies. They're locked in. The borrower and the lender are both hostages. This isn't speculation, it's architecture. The system requires infinite growth. But growth requires resources, energy, and time, all of which are finite. The math doesn't close. It never did. The truth is uncomfortable. Empires don't collapse from external force. They collapse from internal rot. The conquest happens quietly. Through interest rates, bond markets, and central banks. The chains aren't visible, but they're real. Debt became power the moment someone realized it didn't need to be repaid. It just needed to be rolled over. Forever. As long as confidence holds, the system survives. But confidence is fragile. It's built on belief. And belief breaks. Florence believed in the Bardi. Rome believed in the denarius. Spain believed in silver. France believed in paper. Weimar believed in the mark. Lebanon believed in the banks. The world believes in the dollar. Every empire borrows against time itself. And time always collects. If this opened your eyes, subscribe. History has the answers. I'll show you where to look.